section number 54 is entitled Radical Equations. Now we're going to look at a very simple example to see that sometimes you get into trouble with radical equations. Suppose that I told you that the square root of x is -3. And we square both sides. You square the left side, you get x. You square the right side, you get 9. So, we're done. X equals 9. But it won't check. If you plug in 9 for x, the square root of 9 is 3. That doesn't equal to -3. What happens is when you square, sometimes you get erroneous answers. If I tell you x is -4, if you square both sides, you got x squared is equal to 16. What number or numbers, if any, when I square them, give me 16? There might be as many as 2 answers. In fact, plus minus 4 works. But here, the plus 4, you have to reject. Plus 4 is an erroneous root or solution. It's not correct. In fact, in our problem, we got no answers in the first problem. When you square both sides, whether they have radicals or not, you may be getting the wrong answer. Okay, so you must check your answers at the end, because they might be wrong. When you square both sides of an equation, okay, if you have x is equal to -4, and you square both sides, this means x is equal to 4 and positive 4x is -4. That's what this equation means. It doesn't mean this equation. It doesn't recognize the difference. It doesn't recognize the difference. So that's why you're going to run into problems. That's why you're going to run into problems. If you have that x is equal to y plus z, and you square both sides, that's a z. This last equation says x is y plus z, or x is negative y plus z. So, you may not get the right answer, because any answer to this one is going to be wrong. X is not equal to negative y plus z. X is equal to y plus z. And if x is equal to negative y plus z, then anything we get here will be wrong, because it's not from our original equation. If you change your original equation, you're going to get the wrong answer. If somebody asks you to graph y equals x plus 4, and you graph instead y equals x plus 10, you're going to be wrong. Okay. Now, if they were to tell you, ask you this equation, solve for this, you should know there's no solution. The square root of no number will ever be -7. The square root of no number will ever be -7. Okay, you take, this is by definition, the square root of a number is a positive number that when you multiply it by itself gives you back, in this case, x. The square root of a number is a positive or 0 number, such that when you square that number, you get back what's underneath the square root sign. I'm not going to disagree that if I square this number, I don't get 25. I won't disagree with that. In fact, I will. You will get 25. If you square this number, you get back 25. But yet, they're not equal. Why? Because definition of square root of a number. It's either 0 or positive. If there is an answer, it's either a positive number or the number 0. The square root of 0 is 0. The square root of a positive number will always be bigger than 0. By definition. There's absolutely nothing to understand. Somebody woke up one day and said, you know what? When you take the square root of a number, it can never be negative. Why? Because I defined it that way. Somebody just said it one day and it stuck. It stuck. Alright. If you were asked to solve this, the square root of x minus 3 is equal to negative 5. The top one was no solution. Same for the bottom one. Because no matter what you pick for x, when you take away 3, you get a number. No matter what you pick for x, when you take away 3, you get a number. And the square root of that number should equal negative 5. But that's never going to happen. The square root of no number is negative 5. Now, if I tell you the square root of x minus 3 is equal to 5. Should equal to 5. Well, you should know what goes underneath that square root sign. Square that number, look at it. The square root of 25 is 5. That is, this must be 25. I mean, after all, if it were 30, then it would say the square root of 30 equals 5, which is not true. And if x minus 3 was 28, it would say the square root of 28 equals 5, which is not true. X minus 3 must be 25. You add 3 to both sides. You conclude x is 28. And you can check it'll work. X minus 3, the square root of that is the square root of 25, which is 5, just like it was supposed to be. So that is your answer. X is 28. The square root of 28 is not 5. But x, remember, this was not x. This was x minus 3. If x minus 3 was 28, then you know what? X must have been 31. After all, 31 minus 3 is 28. Okay, now that I confused you, let's do some more. I told you the square root of x is 9. What do you take the square root of to get 9? 81. Just square that number. As long as it's positive, square it, and you're done. The square root of 81 is 9. If I tell you the square root of x is 7, well, the square root of 49 is 7. The x must be 49. As long as this number is positive, squaring, that's what x will be. Remember, if the square root of x was negative 7, there'd be no solution. No matter what number you put under there, when you take the square root of it, you will never, ever get a negative number. If I tell you the square root of this is 6, this must be 36. Square root of 36 is 6. So 3x is 36, and 3 times this number is 36. Why? 3 times 12 is 36. You must know your times table well. I tell you that the square root of 3x plus 4 is equal to 7. Well, then this must be 49, because the square root of 49 is 7. Notice I'm not saying x is 49. I'm saying what is underneath the square root sign is 49. So this must be 45. After all, 45 plus 4 is 49. You want to take away 4 from both sides, fine. But you're still going to get 3x is 45. 3 times 15 is 45. So x is 15. If the square root of a equals the square root of b, then what you're taking the square root signs, what you're taking the square roots are equal. What you were taking the square roots of are equal. Taking the square root of a and b. Provided that a and b are at least 0. In other words, the square root of negative 7 equals the square root of negative 7 is not true. If you take the square roots of two things, and those two things are positive, or 0, then those two things are equal. If you take the square root of this, and it equals the square root of that, then these two things are equal, provided they're not negative. They're positive or equal to 0. There are three types of numbers: negatives, number 0, and positive. And I'm saying you can be equal to 0 or greater than 0. That is, I'm saying you can be 0 or positive. You can't be negative. If the square root of one thing equals the square root of another thing, let those two things be equal. And solve for x's sake. But in this case, you really must check. If I tell you the square root of 2x minus 1 is equal to the square root of x plus 4, well then, the square root of a equals the square root of b. That means a equals b. Let's bring all the x's to the left side, because the left side had more. If I'm bringing the x's to the left side, then I should bring the numbers to the other side, the right side. The numbers canceled on the left, the x's cancel on the right. The left side has 1x, 2x, minus 1x is x. The right side is 5. Now remember, that may or may not be an answer. What's under the square root signs must be positive. 5 plus 4 is 9. That's positive. You want to do it here? Remember, x is 5. 2 times 5 is 10. Take away 1 is 9. Okay, the square root of 9 equals the square root of 9. So this answer survived because it allowed, or it made what's underneath the square root sign to either be 0 or positive, not negative. So we keep that answer. You have, for example, the square root of x plus 5 is equal to 9. You should know that's 4. 4 plus 5 is 9. 4 plus 5 is 9. So the square root of x is 4. And the square root of 16 is 4. So x is 16. Now, if you have the square root of 7 minus x plus x is equal to 1. So you bring the x over to the other side as minus x. The left side is this, and the right side is 1 minus x. Now, you square both sides. And now keep in mind, well, let me not put an equal sign here. If you square 1 minus x or negative 1 minus x, you get the same answer. You're going to get 1 minus x all squared. Whether you square 1 minus x or negative 1 minus x, you get the same answer. And when you square the left side, you get 7 minus x. So we might run into an error here. We might get an erroneous answer. we might get an answer for the square root of 7 minus x equals to negative 1 minus x, which, by the way, is just x minus 1. We might get an answer for that. Okay, so you get 7 minus x. You square the right side. It's the difference. You square the 1, you get 1 minus, because there's a minus in the middle. You multiply the 1 into x, and you get x, and you double that. And then you square the x. You get x squared plus x squared. And it's a quadratic, so I'll bring everything to the right side. I'll add on the x, and I'll take away 7. So the left side is 0. The right side, I'll write x squared first, plus x squared first. And if you take away 2x and you add an x, you're minus 1x. And 1 minus 7 is minus 6. So now you try to factor this. You want two numbers to put next to each of those x's, and the two numbers should multiply out to negative 6, but add up to negative 1. Negative 3 and plus 2 will do that. And if this time this is 0, then either the first factor is 0, which happens when x is 3, or the second factor is 0 when x is negative 2. But now that we squared both sides, we must check it. 7 minus 3 is 4. And the square root of 4 is 2. Plus 3. Why, that's not 1. That's not 1. We have to reject 3. Now we try negative 2. By the way, let's see if 3 worked for the other one. 7 minus 3 is 4. The square root of 4 is 2. 1 minus 3, 3 minus 1 is 2. It did work for the other one. It did work for negative 1 minus x. It did work. Now let us try negative 2. 7 minus a negative 2 is 9. The square root of 9 is 3. And if you add on negative 2, yep, you get 1. So the answer is negative 2. X is equal to negative 2. Sometimes both answers, well, let me write it down here very clearly. Bringing the x over to the other side is no big deal. If you have the square root of, say, 7 minus x equals 1 minus x, or negative 1 minus x, when you solve this, that is, when you square both sides, now whether you square this or that, you're still going to get 1 minus x squared. When you solve this, either both answers will be for this one, or both answers will be for that one, or one answer will be for one and one for the other. That's what we got here on our bottom right. One of the answers that we rejected was for the wrong equation. The other one was for the equation we were given. When you square both sides, you might get erroneous answers. What I will point out is this: if you have the square root of x plus 2 is equal to, say, 5, you really don't want to square both sides. If you just brought the 2 over as minus 2, you get the square root of x is 3, and you should know the square root of 9 is 3. So what's underneath the radical, whether it's x or something more complicated, what's under the radical sign is 9. Now, if instead, my goodness, you squared both sides, the right side will be 25. You're squaring a sum. So you'll get this squared, which is x. You'll get plus this product, which is 2 square root of x times 2, 4 square root of x, plus this square, which is 4x. You bring the 40. Okay, so now it becomes rather hard. This is now a quadratic equation in square root of x. That is, if you, for argument's sake, say let u equal square root of x, well then, this would be u, but that would be u squared. After all, if you square the right side, you'll get x. And you have to square the left side. So this equation will be u squared plus 4u plus 4. U squared plus 4u plus 4 equals 25. You take away 25 from both sides, and you get u squared plus 4u minus 21 is 0. U squared plus 4u minus 21 is 0. You try to factor. You want two numbers that multiply out to negative 21 but add up to 4. I would think 7 and negative 3 will do that. So either u is negative 7 or u is 3. But u was the square root of x. So the square root of x is equal to negative 7, which is no solution. Or the square root of x is 4, which means x is 16. We did an awful lot of work in this problem. We even managed to get the wrong answer, no? X was supposed to be 9. Oh, if u minus, right here, excuse me. If u minus 3 is 0, excuse me again. If u minus 3 is 0, then u equals 3, excuse me. U is equal to 3, but u was the square root of x, which is 3, so x is 9. Did an awful lot of work in the second case. In the first case, we can almost do it in our head. Something plus 2 is 5. This must be 3. The square root of some number, which I'm calling x, the square root of some number is 3. The square root of 9 is 3. Okay, you don't want to, you want to isolate the square root sign. That will make it so much easier. Okay, that completes the section on solving radical equations. Good luck with it.